Hey, Scott Jordan and Mark Warner here for Jancast number 131 for September 15th, 2022. And that would mean summer is over. Boy.
This summer went by way too fast.
Yeah.
Way too fast.
Yeah, that's what everybody's saying is like, how's it possible the summer's over? But hey, blatant product plug. Don't forget winter rinse and liquid ice melt. Season's coming up. So,
Yeah, just and you can kind of pack up your mirror coil for the air conditioner and
yeah.
save it for next spring.
Yep, and get your snowblower out. Make sure you don't have bad gas in it or anything. So what's going on in the news, Mark?
Well, one of the biggest things that's happened within the news was Dr. Deborah Birch actually speaking at a GBAC conference, an ISSA sponsored GBAC conference. And she was pretty fascinating. I remember watching her on TV when the whole COVID thing started to roll out. She was, in the COVID updates that were being presented on the TV. And, one of the things that she was talking about was just how thrilled she is that people are still asking about it. She thinks one of the biggest issues that went on with COVID in the very early days was that people were kind of ignoring it, like nobody believed the fact that you could be asymptomatic, showing absolutely no symptoms of anything whatsoever, yet still be someone who could spread it. And that was a concept that nobody understood at all.
And let's keep in mind it was also going to go away in the spring, if I remember right. And then it was going to go away in the summer because sunlight has something to do with it too. Just saying. But.
Yeah. And now I think that really the big point is that we're approaching 3 years of having to deal with COVID, and I think that everybody's going to start looking at this as not necessarily being the pandemic, but the fact that it's endemic, meaning it's something that we're going to, have to fight for the rest of our lives. This is one of those pathogens out there that makes people sick, just like that common cold.
I just read this morning that they're probably going to be suggesting that we get like the flu shots, get some form of a COVID vaccine on a yearly basis.
Yeah. But as it relates to the Dr. Burke's whole presentation, her whole message was all about getting the word out there. And she wrote a book. She was promoting her book. It's called Silent Invasion. And it was really all about trying to get people away from the whole concept that you can stop the pandemic with some form of magical thinking. So anyway, I thought from a topic standpoint, that was pretty cool. But what she commented on afterwards was how thrilled she was that the audience were still asking questions about COVID. And, in the very early days, nobody asked the right questions. So her whole message is that we've learned a lot from going through all this. And, we've lost a few, and those of us that have survived it learned from it.
Yeah. So that was a GBAC symposium. I'm not sure whether or not it's available online, but we'll put a link below this week's Jancast. If it's available, we'll put a link to it so everybody can see it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of sets the segue for what most people are chatting about now, Scott, is not necessarily COVID, but they're like, what's up with this monkeypox thing? Is it something to be worried about? It's got a funny, silly name, makes people laugh. Well, no, it's actually in the same vein as diseases like polio and smallpox, which kind of incite horror when you think about them, right? So the monkeypox name is as laughable as it sounds, is actually getting pretty serious. There's roughly 20,000 people or more that have been diagnosed with it in the United States. And, the CDC is kind of weighing in on it, saying, this is a problem. Be aware of it. Back to what Deborah Birx was talking about, like, we need to not poke our heads into the sand, but to be aware of what's going on around us. The CDC is stressing, hey, you need to be cleaning all the time, cleaning and disinfecting. And Scott, I know that you've talked a great deal about what people should be looking for on their labels.
Yep. So the monkeypox thing is very interesting in that we're getting a lot of calls at the office technical calls. I got one from a major university just last week asking what products we have are effective against it, because the person I talked to said they had an outbreak on campus. So yeah, it's definitely serious. And as compared to, the original COVID, people weren't sure, what the disinfectant procedures were supposed to be. They're, spraying in the air, spraying every surface you possibly touched. I mean, it was great for disinfectant business, but in the case of monkeypox, this is something that's transmitted from surfaces, right, Mark?
That's correct.
As compared to airborne, like COVID is.
Right, exactly right. It kind of leads you and I to believe that there's going to be another increase in demand for people to buy disinfectants, to buy application equipment, because it's the CDC saying you need to clean and disinfect. Do not use fans, do not do dry dusting, don't go walking around sweeping and brooming. All that is worrisome about spreading it, but instead they want people to use wet materials, whether it's a wipe or whether it's the application of a proper disinfectant. And I think that's going to drive some time. But the bigger fear there again, Scott, is do people really know how to use it right? It's not, you don't do it like a glass cleaner with spray and wipe. You've got pre-clean the surface, apply the disinfectant, give it the amount of dwell time required by the EPA to cause a kill, and then recover the slurry and rinse it if it's going to be skin contact.
Well, hopefully after 2.5 years of disinfecting every surface known to man, everybody's kind of gotten acclimated to the fact that there's such a thing as dwell time and have to clean the surfaces first and all that.
Well, it's funny. I remember you saying that, prior to March of 2020, nobody even, you could say dwell time to somebody and they'd go, wait, what? Like, what's that? And so now everybody seems really aware of it. But the fascinating thing about COVID, Scott, and about monkeypox is, these are all naturally occurring things. It's all part of like Mother Nature. And it's not the only thing Mother Nature's throwing at us. In fact, I mean, throwing this extreme weather at us too, which is crazy. Have you seen that in the news?
Yeah. If the ISSA show was in Vegas again, we could go out and see what used to be Lake Mead and a couple other places out there. I mean, it's crazy.
Actually, it's worldwide. So we are all kind of watching the drought in the West with Lake Mead and Hoover Dam. Like you can see the whole thing, but there are droughts happening in Europe. There are rivers in Great Britain that are evaporating away, and they're exposing World War II boats. And mines. They found a 500-pound bomb that hadn't exploded because the water receded, showed the riverbed, and there was this big bomb. So, which would really have been a bummer to drop an anchor there to do some fishing. Like, what was that? I guess it was a big fish, boss.
Well, how about the random people that found the dinosaur footprints in the bed of a dried up river? It's like that's been there for whatever 500 million years or something.
And then the other side of the equation is happening too. Like Pakistan, 1/3 of the landmass of Pakistan is underwater. Due to flooding. 1/3, like 1/3. That'd be like, the United States being underwater from New Jersey over to the Mississippi River. Like, that's amazing.
All this climate issues, particularly with water, really gets into proper training, new equipment and stuff like that. So, back in May, the Interclean show in Amsterdam took place, and the PR on it was very, very well attended. 26,000 cleaning and hygiene professionals from 125 countries. But the biggest thing, the big takeaway from there was, and we've been talking about this, is the robotic market is blowing up over there. And a lot of the equipment trends come from out of the United States anyway. So, but we've been talking about that how robots are really playing in, and that ties in. If you use a robotic auto scrubber, it's probably going to reduce the amount of water you're using. Certainly, right?
Yeah, actually, it is often instructed and taught that use of an auto scrubber, will cut the usage of cleaning solutions in half compared to using a mop and a bucket and a floor machine and a wet vac. So it's the speed they're running and their effectiveness of being able to drop, scrub, pick up, at the speed you're walking. So, at some point, people may be looking at this more than just being more efficient and more cost effective. They might be looking at also as being a way to save on water, as water becomes more and more important as a resource for us to treasure. So, I think that was a big takeaway from Amsterdam, is that people are looking to equipment to not just be more effective and efficient on cleaning, but be more efficient in the use of cleaning solutions and water, which is fantastic. And then the other thing that they were, shedding light on is, how do you get this information from a show in Amsterdam, to the frontline worker? And if not everybody has access to Jancast.com, Scott, I'm just saying.
What do you mean? What do you mean? It's on the internet. So anybody can get it.
So that the whole supply chain has to be active is really where I was going. And
I know.
They're kind of talking about, like, what does the frontline worker use to get, information that might be put on stage in a show like Amsterdam, or like the show coming up in Chicago in October, the ISSA show. Where does that end user get it? And it was kind of interesting, Scott. You found a study that showed
there's a new 2022 facility cleaning decisions management survey that just came out with some real good nuggets. I mean, it talks a little bit about like where people were buying their products. 48% order from a distributor, 33% buy from a distributor, but they buy online. And then note for distributors, 11% combined e-tailers or e-commerce sites and direct sell. So that's 11% are bypassing distributors. But the good news is the survey talks about what's the value added and what do distributors bring. And 80% said they learn about products from a distributor. 29% learn from webcasts or things like Jancast.com. So
yes.
And then 69% learn from magazines. And hey, speaking of magazines, the new sanitary maintenance magazine, excuse that, there's a guy flying over water. So if you haven't seen it, hey, that's me.
That's you.
But so 87% say they get their product knowledge from distributors, and then 45% still say they want more training from those same distributors. So it's all good news from the survey for distributors that their end user customers, facility service providers, whoever, are really looking for them for the training. And Mark, you're really big into the training part of it.
I am. I think training wraps around like three different things. There's training that's related to products. There's training that's definitely related to process. Like, you can have the right stuff, but if you don't know how to use it right, it's not going to be highly effective or efficient. So wraps around process. And then there's training related to learn how to fly a foil on a pole across the water, which you can only get from Gretchen Rauch's article on Scott Jardin and Sanitary Maintenance Magazine. So those were the three things I wanted to throw out there. But like, in reality, all the frontline workers, they are looking to distributors to provide the training on these things, on products, process, and even some managerial skills, right? Leadership skills. And so distributors have this fantastic opportunity to provide that kind of value to the frontline workers. But, one of the questions that comes up from distributors is, that's all great. They're all turning to us, but, we need to enhance our own level of training. Like, where are we going to get the level of education and training that they're asking for? And although manufacturers will provide that in very often in little niche pieces that are related to what they do, whether it's equipment or chemicals or whatever. But the other side of it is that organizations like the ISSA, organizations like the IICRC, Cleaning Management Institute, Restoration Technical Institute, we talked about during the last show. These are all programs that its sole purpose is education. They don't sell products. They sell purely education. They document the education in the form of training and certification with exams and so on. And I think a lot of distributors are starting to turn to these organizations for the kind of training that amps up the game a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
I already know how to put a red pad on a floor machine. Teach me how to, you
Yeah.
know, heal it, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So, you know, that's where all this fits in. And the other side of it, Scott, that we have been talking about for a couple of years now, is that people need to figure out, you know, how do they enhance what they're doing? How do they improve efficiencies and effectiveness?
Yeah.
And in order to do that, they kind of got to know where they're at now.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a program coming up, or actually it just happened
Yeah.
on September 13th. That was an online program for the accredited auditing professional class, which happened on September 13th and will be happening again as a virtual program in December.
So what exactly do people learn? What's the accredited auditing professional course entail?
It's a way of establishing a calibrated benchmark for the level of cleanliness in a facility.
Okay.
And why is that relevant? Because you and I would both certainly have our own opinions on what's clean and what's not clean. If we were asked to look at a building and we came out and had different scores, it would invalidate both of our opinions. And
Yeah.
so somebody goes to a program like this in order to figure out, how do we grade certain things we see? How do we grade fingerprints and traffic patterns? And how does that fit on a grade, so that if an accredited auditor, 2 or 3 of them go into the same building, they come out with roughly the same scores, which then
Okay.
validates every one of them rather than invalidating each of them. So
Cool.
that's what the program is all about, is how to do that. And it gets into, you know, you don't just judge cleanliness by what you see. Anybody in our industry knows that there is more of an influence by what you smell versus
Yeah.
what you see in terms of perceptions of cleanliness. And there's all kinds of instruments that are out there, whether it's fluorescent markers and black lights, or whether it's ATP meters, or whether it's hyperspectral imaging and cameras. And people leverage that. Scott, for years, we've used things like scoff meters to determine the slip coefficients of floor finish, to make sure enough coating was down there to provide that benefit. And we've used indoor air quality meters to determine the level of cleanliness of carpet, because carpet hides soil. And so you want to see if you've got an elevated level of impurities in the air at the carpet, meaning it's time for you to do some low moisture interim form of carpet care. So that's what people don't know. Like, you don't just stroll around saying, yeah, this looks great, man. Good job. Hey, see you. Have a nice day. You know, it's people are looking for some way of using equipment to determine the right way to come up with a score. And then they want to make changes, like their chemical system or their equipment or even their labor. And then they want to measure it again in 6 months or 9 months and show that they've made a positive gain. And
Well, yeah, the administrators that are running schools, or the facility operator or whatever, they want that data, because they want to be able to prove that they've actually spent the money they spent is improving their services, or their whatever the specific is. So if it's not measurable, they have no way of knowing it. So it's all really good, all good stuff. Now we have another blatant product plug, which is the ISSA shows coming up in next month, pretty much almost a month exactly, right?
Right.
And you're doing some training at the show as well, right?
Yeah, I have a little keynote session that I'm
Cool.
doing for on Wednesday at noon in Chicago.
Cool.
And that, uniquely enough, is kind of similar to what we're talking about here. It's about the value of education, training, and certification, and how it can help propel someone in a cleaning career, whether it's on the service side, or whether it's involved with the supply chain, or whether it's in academia, research and development. All of that springboards off of increasing knowledge about the cleaning industry and the process and the products that exist. So that'll be kind of a cool little session to do. I'm kind of excited about that.
Well, we'll have one more Jancast before the show, and then we'll be doing live broadcasting, streaming from the booth itself, kind of like we did in our virtual distributor show 2 years ago. But we put a lot of information out today, so I think that's enough for our listening audience out there. But thank you very much, Mark, and thanks for all you that have tuned in for all of this wealth of information we've passed on.
And stay tuned for future Jancasts. We've got some amazing treasures coming at you.
That's right. So thanks a lot, everybody. Stay safe. See you in Chicago. Bye-bye.